Before we get started with working with trigonometric identities, we're going to want to work with how to simplify trigonometric expressions. So for example, suppose I asked you to rewrite tangent of theta times cosecant of theta so that it contained only sines and cosines. Well, the way we can do that is express tangent of theta as sine of theta over cosine of theta, express cosecant of theta as 1 over the sine of theta. Notice that the sines of theta cancel out or divide out, and we're left with 1 over cosine of theta. In this next problem, we're going to take the cosine of theta divided by 1 minus the sine of theta and multiply both the numerator and denominator by 1 plus sine of theta. So we have cosine of theta over 1 minus sine of theta times 1 plus sine of theta over 1 plus sine of theta. Now in the numerator, I'm just going to leave these as two separate factors, cosine of theta times 1 plus sine of theta. But in the denominator, I'm going to FOIL these two factors out. 1 times 1 is 1. Outer gives me plus sine theta. Inner minus sine theta. They cancel each other out. Negative sine theta times plus sine theta is minus sine squared of theta. Now you should recognize 1 minus sine squared of theta is equal to cosine squared of theta. So I have cosine of theta times 1 plus sine of theta. And in place of the 1 minus sine squared of theta, we put cosine squared of theta. Notice that one of these cosines of theta are going to divide out, and I'm left with 1 plus sine of theta divided by cosine of theta. Let's do one more. In this last problem, what I'm going to do is get a new piece of paper because it's longish. And we're going to have sine of theta plus cosine of theta divided by cosine of theta. Add to that cosine of theta minus sine of theta divided by sine of theta. What we want to do here is write these expressions over a common denominator. So, in the first expression, sine of theta plus cosine of theta over cosine of theta, I'm going to multiply by sine theta divided by sine of theta. And in the second expression, cosine of theta minus sine of theta over sine of theta, there I'm going to multiply by cosine of theta over cosine of theta. So that in this first expression, I'm going to distribute the sine of theta in the numerator. That gives me sine squared of theta plus sine of theta times the cosine of theta. And that's over cosine theta sine theta. Plus, distribute in the second expression, cosine times cosine is cosine squared of theta minus sine theta cosine theta over cosine theta times sine theta. Notice now that I have a common denominator, that allows me to add the numerators. So I have sine squared plus, I have a sine theta minus, I have a plus sine theta cosine theta minus sine theta cosine theta. So that result is 0. And then I have plus cosine squared of theta. And this is over cosine of theta times sine theta. You should recognize that sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta is equal to 1. So we have 1 over cosine of theta times the sine of theta. So this expression up here ultimately simplified to 1 over cosine of theta times sine theta.